The rumble reached me before I saw anything. A low vibration too deep to be mistaken for traffic, too methodical for thunder. I stood at my kitchen window, coffee in hand, watching steam curl into the crisp autumn air. Then it came into view, a yellow bulldozer crawling along the far edge of my property, tearing into the earth like it belonged there. My land, my trees. My daughter, Jenny, walked in behind me, barefoot and bleary-eyed from her weekend visit. What's that noise? I didn't answer at first. I was too focused on the figure stepping out from behind a work truck, a woman in a sharply pressed pantsuit and low-heeled boots. She moved across the construction site like a queen, surveying her court, clipboard in hand. Even from a distance, I recognized her. Gianni Thompson, I said grimly. President of the Maple Ridge. Jenny narrowed her eyes. They can't build on your land, can they? I exhaled. No, but it looks like they think they can. 6 months ago, I received the first letter, a polite notice from the Maple Ridge Estates Homeowners Association suggesting that my unkempt woodland posed an aesthetic burden on the adjacent community. It was worded in friendly tones and closed with warm regards. I tossed it in the recycling. A month later, the second letter arrived. It cited violations of community harmony standards, whatever that meant, and included a $100 fine. I ignored that one too. Then came the third letter, legalese and threats of action. I had just begun contacting my attorney when yesterday's letter landed in my mailbox. Lick paper, color-coded graphics, and a heading that nearly made me spit my coffee. The Maple Ridge Homeowners Association is proud to announce the groundbreaking of a new community workshop to be built on the undeveloped parcel adjacent to the eastern boundary of the community. That undeveloped parcel was mine. My grandfather bought these 3 wooded acres in 1962, long before a single cookie-cutter house stood in Maple Ridge. I pulled on my boots, grabbed my phone, and marched outside. The air was sharp with the scent of disturbed earth. Birds scattered. As the bulldozer grumbled deeper into the tree line, survey stakes dotted the edge of my property, bright orange markers, like pins on a war map. Diane turned at the sound of my footsteps. She smiled. It was the kind of smile a snake might offer, a mouse dight practiced, lacking all sincerity. Mr. Mitchell, she said, clipboard hugged to her chest. How wonderful to see you. We're just staking out the community expansion area. I stopped 5 feet from her. That's interesting, because you're currently standing 50 feet into my property. She tilted her head slightly, like a schoolteacher correcting a child. Oh, there's been a misunderstanding. According to the revised community map, this wooded section has always been designated as common land. Your deed covers the residential lot, not the back acreage. I raised my phone and pulled up a photo of the official county survey. This is for my deed. It clearly outlines all 3 acres including this woodland. Been in my family since the 60s. Her smile didn't fade, but something flickered behind her eyes. Well, our legal team has reviewed the matter. The original developer had intended this area for community use. We're simply correcting an oversight. She handed me a paper. At the top was a heading, Amendment to Maple Ridge Community Bylaws. The signatures beneath it weren't familiar. The document referenced a meeting I had never been invited to and included a crude map with my land shaded in green labeled Community Expansion, Phase 2. I'm not part of your HOA, I said. Her voice remained syrupy. Actually, you are. When the previous owner sold the adjacent lot to the developer, there was a provision that all connecting properties would be incorporated into the association. You've been a member since you bought the home, you've just never participated. A bald-faced lie. My family had never sold, transferred, or signed anything related to HOA membership. I'll need to have my attorney look into that, I said evenly. Of course, she said sweetly, but construction is already approved and funded. We're breaking ground next week. She turned back to her workers without another word. That's when I noticed the stakes weren't placed along the boundary. They ran deep into the forest. They were planning to take a full third of my land. That night, I sat on my back porch, watching the fireflies float like lazy stars above the treetops. The trees they planned to cut. My phone buzzed. It was Harold, an old friend who worked in the county records office. Jack, he said, you were right to be suspicious. Someone filed a new plat map last month showing your back acreage as common land. But the documentation is sketchy. Signatures don't match, and the surveyor listed doesn't exist in our registry. They're moving fast, I said. Faster than usual. They even applied for construction permits using that phony map. Can you send me the files? They're already on your email. After I hung up, I opened my laptop. The plat map looked official at first glance, shaded regions, parcel numbers, a notarized stamp, but the signature of the surveyor was illegible, and the office address listed was a UPS drop box. I started drafting emails. One to Sandra, my attorney, one to the county commissioner, one to the state real estate board, another to the Environmental Protection Agency. I suspected protected wetlands were being bulldozed. This wasn't my first land dispute. After 4 decades as a professional surveyor, I'd seen every dirty trick in the developer playbook, but I'd never seen one as arrogant as this. A knock interrupted me. Eleanor Hughes, my neighbor for over 20 years, stood nervously on my porch. "Jack," she said, barely above a whisper, "I came to warn you. I was at the HOA meeting tonight. They're planning to break ground, Monday permit or no permit." "That's not legal," I said. "They don't care. Diane told the board you agreed to sell them the land, that this was just a formality." "That's a lie." "I know," Eleanor said, wringing her hands. But most people believed her. "And Jack, this isn't just a workshop. They showed us plans. It's a full factory, a small furniture operation. Diane's brother is behind it. She says it's going to be a community employment opportunity." So that was the game. Use HOA funds to build a factory, hide it behind community buzzwords, and hand it to family. After Eleanor left, I walked the boundary line with a flashlight. Every stake was off by dozens of feet. Every measurement contradicted official records. It was a deliberate land grab. I had a choice. I could march into a courtroom, file an injunction, and halt the project right then. But that's what they expected, no? I would do something far more effective. I would let them build. The next morning, I stood in the kitchen again, coffee in hand, camera on the windowsill. Workers arrived with chainsaws and heavy machinery. I watched, photographed, and noted the license plates. When Diane drove by later in her shiny black SUV, she slowed, clearly expecting confrontation. I smiled and waved. Her confusion was delicious. Later that day, I visited Sandra's office with the deed, the 1962 survey, and every document Diane had handed me. "They're overreaching," Sandra said, flipping through the forged amendment. "This isn't just encroachments, it's fraud. I want to let them keep going." Sandra looked up sharply. "What? Let them spend money, pour foundations, invest in their mistake. I'll document everything. When the dust settles, I want them so deep they'll never climb out." "That's risky," she warned. "Once a structure is established, they'll argue hardship, seek grandfathering, maybe even adverse possession. They won't last that long," I said, "and I'm not doing this just for me. They've been bullying this whole neighborhood. Eleanor for her garden, forcing Marcus to take down the wheelchair ramp for his father. This has to stop for good." Sandra sighed. "I'll prepare everything. Just don't wait too long." "I won't," I said, "but the deeper the trap, the harder the fall." Over the next 3 days, I documented everything. Every tree felled, every pallet delivered, every minute of illegal work. I even installed trail cameras to capture nighttime activity. On Friday, a cement truck rumbled onto my land to pour footings. Diane arrived shortly after, stepping out of her car with an air of victory. "Mr. Mitchell," she called, approaching with a bright smile. "Have you reviewed the paperwork?" "I have," I replied, "very educational." Her smile twitched. "Then you understand this project is going forward. The community voted unanimously." "How generous of them," I said. "By the way, who is Thompson Custom Furniture? I saw their logo on the delivery truck." She blinked. "Just a community partner. They'll offer woodworking classes." I nodded. "Lovely. Don't let me stop your progress." I walked away, camera swinging at my side. Behind me, Diane spoke hurriedly to a foreman. I didn't need to hear the words. Her mask was cracking. That evening, my inbox lit up with a message from the county permit office. Their application had been flagged for inconsistencies. Ownership was in question. An official investigation had begun. Perfect. They had poured their foundation literally onto my land. And now the ground beneath them was about to collapse.
Saturday morning arrived with the low whine of chainsaws echoing through the forest. I sat calmly at the edge of my porch, camera in hand, sipping from my thermos as I documented each tree brought down. Diane must have thought she'd beaten me. Was invisible to them now, just a quiet, stubborn old man they believed had given up. But I wasn't just collecting pictures. I was gathering ammunition. I documented truck deliveries, license plates, machinery types, and even soil conditions. I had an app on my phone that tracked coordinates and timestamps. Every photo was backed up in the cloud and sent to Sandra. Nightly. That afternoon, a flatbed truck arrived with large bundles of lumber, all stamped Thompson Custom Furniture. The name alone was confirmation. Diane was turning my land into a personal business empire using HOA dues and lies. But the game wasn't just about documentation anymore. It was about exposing the web she was spinning. Sunday morning, I walked across the street to Eleanor's house carrying a folder. She invited me in nervously, as though expecting a lecture. "I need your help," I said plainly. "I don't want to get in trouble," she started. "Too late for that," I replied, laying the folder on her kitchen table. Inside were documents. A copy of her own property survey, the one I'd helped her file 5 years ago, when she built her vegetable garden. "They're threatening me again," she whispered, looking at the pages. "Diane says I'm violating setback rules." I pointed to the highlighted measurement lines. "Your garden is compliant by nearly 8 feet. This proves it." She looked up at me, her voice shaking. "They said if I don't support the project, I'll be fined or even sued." I placed a second folder in front of her. "I'm building a case. Not just for me, for everyone they've bullied. I need testimonies, records, anything. If we don't fight together, they'll keep winning." She nodded, eyes brimming with reluctant resolve. By sundown, I'd spoken. To 4 more neighbors. Marcus Dash, the young man who'd been forced to remove a ramp he built for his father. Linda, ticketed for hanging a wreath on her garage too early in the season. Samir, a recent immigrant, who was fined repeatedly for having solar lights along his driveway. Each of them had a story. Each had quietly paid, adjusted, or apologized, fearful of escalating things. The HOA had kept them isolated and intimidated, but I was tying them together. And together we were louder. Monday morning, the sky hung low with gray clouds, the kind that promise rain without delivering. I stood in my living room, organizing paperwork, when Jenny returned, storming through the front door like a gust of wind. "Dad," she called. "Are you seriously letting them build?" I didn't answer right away. I was fitting labels onto manila folders, one marked environmental impact, another permit fraud. "Have you lost your mind?" she asked, dropping her coat. "They've got a whole structure going up on your property." "I haven't lost my mind," I said calmly. "I've just found a better strategy." I handed her my calendar. She read aloud, "County Commissioner meeting today. State Real Estate Board tomorrow. Environmental Protection Agency site visit Wednesday." She looked up, stunned. What is this?" "This is patience," I said. "I'm letting them invest, letting them sink deeper. Every dollar they pour into that structure, every piece of equipment they drag in, increases their liability." She stared at me. "You're laying a trap." I smiled. She grinned back, reluctantly impressed. "All right, what can I do?" "Grab a notepad. We're going to war. At 2 p.m. I sat in the county municipal hall beside Jenny. A briefcase full of documentation on the table before us. Across from us sat Diane Thompson, flanked by a man in a designer suit with a BLUETOOT earpiece. Their body language screamed overconfidence. Commissioner Linda Davis entered, an iron-spined woman with short gray hair and a reputation for calling things straight. "This emergency session is called to address a construction dispute between the Maple Ridge Homeowners Association and Mr. Jack Mitchell of Forest Lane," she said, taking her seat. "I'd like to begin," I said, standing. "I am Jack Mitchell, sole owner of the 3-acre parcel at 1423 Forest Lane. A portion of that land has been unlawfully seized and developed by the HOA under the false claim of communal ownership. I have brought documentation to prove it." Diane's lawyer objected, claiming the HOA acted under revised community bylaws. I countered immediately, dropping a printed survey on the table. "This is the original deed and certified land survey. It predates the Maple Ridge development by 40 years. It has never been amended. I have never joined the HOA. Any claim to this land is fraudulent." I slid the folder toward Commissioner Davis. "Here are photos, video footage, time-stamped logs, and copies of forged documents submitted to the permit office." Jenny handed over a USB drive. "We also have video testimony from 5 neighbors, showing patterns of HOA abuse and illegal fines." Commissioner Davis flipped through the files slowly, her jaw tightening. "Ms. Thompson," she said, glancing up, "did your board approve construction on this land?" "We held a community vote," Diane said, still clinging to her false calm. It was unanimous. You held a vote on land you do not own? Davis asked. Diane paused. Who submitted this plat map to the permit office? The commissioner continued. Our land consultant. Diane started. I interrupted. A fake surveyor listing a non-existent license, using a UPS box as an office. I traced it myself. The room fell dead silent. Effective immediately, Commissioner Davis said. All construction on the parcel is suspended pending full investigation. If ownership fraud is confirmed, legal action will follow. Diane's face turned pale, but I wasn't finished. That night, the construction site stood frozen. Yellow tape fluttered from orange cones. Workers packed their gear. The truck sat idle, but I was still working. I filed an official complaint with the state real estate board, attaching all records of the fraudulent land grab. The following morning, Sandra contacted the district attorney's office. The scope of the fraud: falsified maps, unauthorized use of community funds, threats against homeowners had become criminal. Meanwhile, Jenny helped me coordinate with neighbors. I created witness logs, scanned old letters and fines, and printed timelines showing the coordinated harassment campaigns. Then came the letter from the Environmental Impact Agency. A visit was scheduled for Wednesday morning. We had proof the factory was being built on land bordering a protected wetland buffer zone. Bulldozers had already torn through it. Eleanor called that evening. Jack, she whispered. There. Panicking. Diane called an emergency meeting tonight. They're trying to push through a vote to censure you. I'm not part of their HOA, I said. I know, Eleanor replied. But she's claiming the original property lines were uncertain and that you're just using this to damage the community. Let her talk, I said. Her words are rope. I hung up and returned to my porch. The wind whispered through the half-cleared trees. The silence felt different now. It wasn't fear, it was anticipation. They'd built there. Foundation on lies. And the cracks had started to show. Wednesday morning broke cool and gray. I waited at the tree line, coffee in hand, watching as a black SUV rolled into the worksite. A woman in an EPA jacket stepped out, followed by two other officials with clipboards. I approached calmly. Jack. Mitchell, I said, offering my hand. You're standing on what used to be a protected wetland buffer. She raised her eyebrows. Used to be? They bulldozed it. Without a permit, without even checking the zoning overlays. The team fanned out, snapping photos, measuring tree stumps, and examining soil erosion. One man muttered under his breath, pointing to the foundation. If they hit groundwater here, that's a federal violation. Jenny joined me as we watched the EPA investigators work. You think this is enough? They've committed local, state, and now federal infractions, I said. It's more than enough. An hour later, one of the agents handed me a card. We'll be submitting our findings to the Attorney General's office. We'll be in touch. As they left, another truck pulled in marked Thompson Custom Furniture. I raised my camera. A man emerged from the driver's side, tall, square-jawed, wearing a fitted flannel and clipboard. Robert Thompson. I had done my homework. He had 3 failed businesses in 2 states, a trail of unpaid debts, and a habit of fleeing just before lawsuits hit. He stepped onto my land like he owned it, shouting instructions to no one in particular until he noticed me filming him. His face blanched. I smiled and waved. He left 5 minutes later without unloading a thing. Thursday morning, Sandra and I filed our final set of documents. Formal. Trespassing charges, environmental damage claims, and civil complaints for property theft and fraudulent misrepresentation. Commissioner Davis followed up with her own notice. A public hearing would be held to decide whether the HOAS board had operated outside their charter and misappropriated community funds. The district attorney called by noon. Charges were pending. Investigators had found multiple falsified documents on file, and Diane's digital signature had appeared on all of them. That afternoon, I received an email blast from the HOA board. Diane had stepped down for health reasons, but I wasn't celebrating yet. That night, Eleanor and 3 other neighbors gathered in my dining room for coffee and updates. Jenny had turned the space into our war room whiteboards filled with timelines, violation logs, aerial maps. Marcus brought a flash drive. "This is a screen recording from my security cam last month," he said. "Shows them digging past your boundary line." I wasn't sure if it was useful. It was. They were using HOA paid workers to move materials onto my property well before construction began, long before they filed their fraudulent permits. "Good," I said. "Every brick they laid is one more nail in their legal coffin." Friday came with a flurry of phone calls. First, Sandra confirmed that the county had ordered a full cease and desist on all HOA development activities. No exceptions. Second, a reporter from the Maple Ridge Weekly called. "We heard you're suing the HOA for land theft. Can we get a statement?" "Sure," I said. "They built a factory on my land. I let them finish pouring the foundation so they'd pay for the demolition too." The article ran online that night. The headline read, "Greater than HOA factory built on private land, president resigns amid scandal." It exploded across local forums. Suddenly, neighbors who had once been too afraid to speak up were coming forward in droves. One woman revealed she had paid $800 in code violations for having white curtains. Another man said Diane had told him, "Your accent makes the neighborhood feel unsafe." It wasn't just land theft, it was systematic bullying. By Saturday morning, the HOA board had collapsed. The treasurer resigned. The secretary issued a public apology. A recall petition gathered 117 signatures in under 24 hours. Sandra filed a motion to compel the HOA to not only cease operations on my property, but to pay damages, legal fees, and the full cost of restoring the forest. We also demanded a full audit of the HOA's accounts, all payments to Thompson Custom Furniture, and restitution for every improperly fined resident. The lawsuit went to court in late spring. The judge ruled unequivocally in our favor. Greater than the defendant knowingly and willfully trespassed, falsified land records, and used community funds to finance a private business on land they did not own. The ruling mandated full demolition of the factory foundation, environmental restoration of the wetland buffer, $190,000 in damages paid to me, $75,000 restitution fund created for affected residents, disbanding of the HOA's governing board, civil fraud. Charges against Dan Thompson and Robert Diane was arrested 2 weeks later. Her brother vanished for a time, then reappeared in Ohio, where he was subpoenaed for related charges. The demolition began under court supervision. Bulldozers returned, but this time to undo the damage. Eleanor planted flowers along her walkway. Without fear, Marcus rebuilt his ramp. The Maple Ridge sign was removed from the front gate, and Jack Mitchell walked my fully restored 3 acres in peace for the first time in over a year. 1 year later, on the anniversary of the first bulldozer breach, we held a community barbecue. No HOA. No board members, just neighbors, families, stories, and healing. Jenny brought her kids. Marcus wheeled his father down my new gravel path to a bench we'd installed under the oaks. Eleanor brought vegetables from her thriving garden. Sandra joined us briefly, raising her soda can. To Jack, she said, "The most patient man I've ever met, and the most dangerous." We laughed. I took the bench seat and looked out over my woods. Where once there were survey stakes, now saplings swayed in the breeze. Nature was taking her land back, one root at a time. Jenny sat beside me. You didn't just protect your land, she said. You showed all of us how to fight back. I smiled. Sometimes, I said, you don't need to push, you just need to wait and document everything.